Morning. Okay, click on the little thing right there.
Thanks. Well, good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Excellent. So I just want to say thank you first and foremost for all of you taking your time to come tonight. We're really excited to be able to have this forum and answer some questions and get some thoughts from all of you. My name is Karen Pincus. I'm the city manager. And as a point of personal note, I have been working to try to build a new library in the city of El Cerrito since I started here at the city as an assistant to the city manager back in 2001. So yes, that's 22 years I've been working on this project. So I'm really excited to be here tonight. I'm really excited to talk with all of you. I want to acknowledge some of our staff members. So we have Assistant City Manager Alexandra Orologas. We have our City Clerk Holly Charlotte. We have our IT Manager Eric Ing. We have our Assistant to the City Manager Will Provost, and of course our Community Development Director Melanie Mintz. Did I miss any staff in the room? Oh, good. Okay, I also want to acknowledge that we do have BART Board Director here, Rebecca Saltzman. So we're really happy that you're here since you're going to be such a big partner in this project. Are there any other electeds in the room I've missed? Okay. Councilmember Fideli is online. Hello, Councilmember Fideli. So anyway, so just wanted to just kind of briefly go over, I'm going to go over a slideshow. It's not going to be too long, I promise. And hopefully it'll answer some of the questions you might already have. And then after that, we're going to discuss if there are any additional library priorities that come up with this group. We will be able to write those down and take notes on that, and then open it up for questions and answers. So again, our agenda tonight, we're going to talk about where we've been and where we are now, the need for a new library, the resident priorities that we have gathered over time, and specifically most recently we've done several different surveys, the proposed location, the potential finance measure that we're discussing, the timeline, and then again questions and answers. So this is a lot of words, so I'll just try to go over it as best I can. The first line there, this is a timeline of where we've been. You'll notice that first timeline is a 10-year period. And I could talk a lot about what happened in those 10 years, but suffice it to say, again, when I first started here with the city, the state of California had just passed a grant in the Library Construction Bond Act in 2000, and they were opening it up for grant funding for cities and agencies to try to apply for this grant funding. Are there any library staff here or online? Do we know? If we see Heidi and Allison, okay, Allison, hello, Allison, our Contra Costa County librarian is also online, and we could also potentially have her answer some questions if there's questions of the library. So we've worked with the Contra Costa Library. Back then, that 2000 Construction Bond Act, and we saw, again, brand new to the city, and this sounds cool. We have a small library, maybe we can look for grant funding. But the way that the grant funding was set up was that you had to have essentially a shovel-ready project because they were giving millions and millions of dollars, and we hadn't even done any of the work to do that. So we started to do that in anticipation of another library construction bond grant that was going to be put on the ballot, the state ballot. So what we did and what was required for the first one was to do a full needs assessment, meaning we hired a consultant and do a full needs assessment of the community, what the building status is now, and what the needs were based on all these library standards and the population of the community, and then do a building program, and all of this had to be done in a very specific way. So we worked on that beginning in about 2002 through 2004, we did an extensive work. And if you look on our website, there's a lot of this is still there. The first original library needs assessment that came out in 2004. On the 2006 ballot, the library construction bond failed. So that was blow number one. So, but we still decided to try to move forward. And again, in those 10 years, I could talk a lot about, maybe over drinks one day, we'll all get together and we can have a long conversation. But suffice it to say, the city used to have a redevelopment agency, and redevelopment funding through that agency would have been allowed to be working with the library. We actually worked with the school district at one point to surplus, they actually went so far as to surplus the land underneath the senior center to try to sell it to us. But then redevelopment agencies were dissolved by the state of California, and we lost that funding. In 2013, and that was about 2012. In 2013, the city council confirmed that the library in our strategic plan, that was the first time the city did a strategic plan setting very big, long vision strategic goals, and that the library was a priority. So we updated, because it had at that point been 10 years. So we updated the needs assessment with the same consultant and worked with also some architects to kind of, look at what the current status would be since the needs assessment was 10 years old. That was updated. So then we looked at different site options. We tried to figure out how we could fund it. And so the city council decided to place a measure on the ballot in 2016. 63% of the city voted yes, which is a huge majority, but it's not 2/3. It failed by just about 500 votes. In 2018, but actually, let me take a step back. As you can see, one of the things that we were struggling with was having a location for it. And so that was at the time where we approached Bart. Oh, hello, Mayor Motoyama. Just want to say hello. Mayor Motoyama is here. We approached Bart because Bart at that time was looking at the feasibility of doing transit-oriented development at some of their stations. And as you know, they're looking at that right now. We're working really hard on this project at the El Cerrito Plaza station. So we went to Bart and explored the idea of like, hey, when you guys are ready to go out to request for proposals from developers, would you be willing to put a library building in there to see, if developers would be interested? And lo and behold, they were, which was exciting. And so, so we started moving forward, partnering with Bart to see how we could make this happen. And, the Bart project is a separate function from the library, and we're not here to talk about the Bart project tonight. However, again, we've got Bart, our board director here, and Melanie, who's our community development director, who's been the staff liaison. And there's going to be plenty of other opportunities to talk about that project and what's involved in that project and all that stuff. But for tonight, just kind of as a point of order, tonight we'll be focusing on the library portion of this project. So AB 2923 requires minimum zoning on BART-owned parcels. What that means is that essentially the state is kind of overseeing this process. The BART TOB project is coming to the Planning Commission and DRB for discussion and for consideration, but the city will not have approval status over this project. That's also another point to make about this project. So in 2019, we conducted another library workshop, again, trying to catch up. It's been 5 years since we did the needs assessment. We worked with Group 4, which is an architect firm, and we had a lot of discussion about different proposed sites. We, just while we were exploring this with Bart, we wanted to look, are there other sites on the avenue? Are there other, we talked about, should we knock down and rebuild the community center? Should we look at another city-owned piece of property was a civic theater? A lot of those were considered, but prohibitively expensive compared to this project. So again, in 2020, as you can see, BART issued the RFQ and requested developers to submit site plans either with or without a library. And as Melanie will tell you, the developers seem, and I know at least one BART board director is very excited and enthused about the idea of having a library as a wonderful amenity within this project, and also in that area. Totally, it's going to transform the area. So what we've been doing is working with BART. We have BART entered into an exclusive negotiating agreement with a specific development team, the pre-planning, the public engagement, and all that thing, all of those things with regard to the DoD project has been happening since 2021. So now what we're here is that we're going to be looking at whether or not the city is going to be able to put up the funding to be included as a library within this project. So that's how we got here. So the needs assessment, and going back to the one that was developed first in 2004, again in 2014, and then reassessed again, if you will, in 2019. I want you all to know that all of the things that were discussed were definitely considered as far as what is good library standards, what is the most up-to-date standards. That's why we updated it a couple times. What do libraries look like now? And what are the needs of the libraries now? The 20,000 square foot number came specifically from those calculations and from industry standards. So the library we have now, very cute, very quaint, very old, was built in 1948 and does not currently meet health and safety standards now. This has been a big issue. If you have been paying attention with the last few years, there have been a lot of cities that have been able to open up their libraries as a cooling center or a warming center or an air quality center. We just had icky smoke in the air last week. We can't do that in our library. It's too old and the systems have not been upgraded, and we haven't been able to afford to upgrade it. Let me make a note here. Actually, let me take a pause. The library building is owned and maintained by the city. However, we have an agreement with the Contra Costa Library to run the library. So we handle the infrastructure, the maintenance, and the building, and the library handles the staff, the books, everything kind of inside. But it is our responsibility to maintain the building. And for those of you who have asked, and I know you have, no, we cannot open any more in this location than we are right now. And that is because they base their staffing specifically on what is available to be all the hours that are available within that library. And because our library is so small and they can't hire additional full-time staff to be able to staff it, the 46 hours a week in this building is the most we will ever be able to have. So I want to make that point too. If you've ever been to the library when school gets out, good luck having a nice quiet read. It's not going to happen. But that's another thing, because it's one kind of big room, right? So if you do want to have a story time or you do want to have some quiet time, there's no separation at all. And that has been an issue, but it's definitely overcrowded. It's definitely too small. We can't fit any more books in there. It's just far small, but it also doesn't have a space for programs, activities, and classes. Libraries today are not like libraries of the past. You may be thinking of the library as the shh, and you just sit and quietly read. That is not what libraries are anymore. I invite you to visit some of our other neighboring cities, their libraries, Walnut Creek, San Pablo. They are community centers. They have space for people to be able to have programs and activities. They have the ability to have kids having a fun, reading day here, and then some quiet homework work space in another part of the library or another room even. Imagine having another room. So libraries nowadays they're not like they used to be. I think of my father. That was what he did. That was one of the things that made him most happy. He had a computer at home. For all of those who are saying, yeah, well, the internet, we don't need libraries anymore. My dad is a perfect example. He had a computer at home and he had Wi-Fi, but every day he went to his neighborhood library and he went and hung out with some of his pals and used the more powerful computers at the library and was able to look up more things and be able to, it's a different atmosphere. It's not the same, not your old type of library. So this is what we're trying to express, is that this isn't just about books. This isn't just about internet. This is about a real community space for all of us. And frankly, it's terrible access for seniors, for disabled residents. Again, it's one room, the bathroom, if you've ever been in there, it's barely hard for me to get in. And I am not, I don't have any disability issues with walking. It's just an outdated, old building that has it's served us well for a really long time, but it's outlived its useful life. So what we've been doing is, again, over this 20-year period that we've been looking for different ways and different avenues to try to build a new library in El Cerrito, we have been collecting input, but just recently, if you saw the mailers that went to your house, we've been collecting input through an online survey, and we got over 400, over 400 or 500 responses, which is a fabulous, amazing. And so we're so thrilled that people have had so much interest in this. This tells us that we're on the right path. So here's what we heard. Here's the priorities. And again, we'll have some time for, if you don't see anything on this list, of more things that we can add. But this was just by far and away the main priorities that we heard. First and foremost, a library that meets current health codes. That'd be nice, so that we don't have to worry about it falling down or being damaged in an earthquake, but also that it provides cooling, warming, charging centers during extreme weather events. It is the sad reality that we live in now that we have to prepare for this. And right now, this is the only building that the city owns that has air conditioning. Think about that. Can't fit 25,000 people in here. So another priority is summer reading programs for school-aged children. This is some of the obvious things. Expanded library hours, as I was saying before. If we have a bigger building, we are able to staff it more appropriately, and we can be open 7 days a week. Literacy tutoring programs. You would think in such an educated place like El Cerrito, because we're right here by Cal. We have a lot of Cal alum and professors and everybody who lives here. You would think that this might not be something that we would think of, but you would be surprised how many people use our library and how many people out there do need help with literacy. And the county has talked about this a lot within their whole strategic plan. And so this actually is a priority that we have heard about, that people are looking for. Also, people who may not speak English as their first language. This can also be for them. Free family programs, activities, and classes. Again, we are just not able to offer those right now, but this is something that people would be looking forward to. Improved access for seniors and disabled residents, enhancing the children's programs and enhancing the book budget so that we have more books available to us. And of course, can't forget a homework center for students. I know that going to the library after school, where I grew up, was a big deal. And to be able to access not just books, but now computers and different technology is really important. So that's what we heard. And like I said, we'll have time to talk more in a little bit to hear any additional priorities in the room. Nope, oops. Okay. Other comments that we heard were, again, providing a children's area for story times and parent-child reading space. Again, just having some separation, having some places you could have some quiet reading time, or just maybe for a parent and a child, but also for a children's, maybe a group story time. I mean, those are really super popular, and it's hard for us to be able to do that in our current space. Public access and computers, like I talked about, those are very important, particularly for some people that may not have the ability to have a computer at home, or their computer isn't as good as the one that they would have at the library. And of course, free Wi-Fi. They offer that now, but this would be able to be expanded to more people. Space for community meeting rooms and education classrooms. So again, as I said, libraries are now community centers. We have the ability in a 20,000 square foot facility to be able to have rooms where we could have meetings like this, or we could have, people could rent for space to have meetings for themselves, or that we could have maybe some classrooms for, hopefully we don't have to worry about going online again or going virtual again when it comes to school, but we could have some sort of space for people to be able to go to. And then of course, expanding the collection, which is simply impossible in the building we have now. So this is what you all came for, right? You want to know about this stuff. So the proposed location is indeed, as I indicated, at the downtown El Cerrito Plaza BART project. So not only is it a great opportunity to build a very cool amenity in this space, not only is this going to help transform that entire area, but it will save El Cerrito taxpayers approximately $10 million from doing a standalone library. That's real. That's significant. When we went in 2016, we asked for a $30 million bond measure. In today's dollars, that's closer to 40 million, and that's as is. But that doesn't take into account the cost of construction and also having to find a place to put it, because that is one of the things that we did not have prior to. Now, if we are able to put it here, it would be co-located in one of the buildings on the project, and it would, again, it would save approximately $10 million from what we would have expected to pay if we had a standalone library. And then, of course, the highlights, it's a transit hub, it's a transportation hub, obviously at a BART station. For those of you, before you ask, yes, there will be on-street managed parking, including disabled spots. We will talk about that. If you have questions about that, we can answer some of those later. There will be planned open spaces near the building. We're envisioning it to be on the corner across from Starbucks, if you can visualize that. The front of it is slated, and Melanie, we can talk about this later. The front of it is slated to have a public open space that the city will be able to take advantage of. So there will be open space and a public plaza, kind of like how we've done outdoors here at City Hall for people to be able to gather. It will have a bike station, and obviously I mentioned it's right across the street from Starbucks, and it's also close to also all the food shopping services at the plaza. So the proposed measure that we are looking to pose to the city council and have the city council consider is that it would be a local finance measure to fund the construction of the library as well as enhanced and expanded operations. This means it would be a parcel tax. And the reason it would be a parcel tax is because we could indeed use it for library hours, for maintenance, for increased anything other. We don't have to spend it on just the building. It can be spent on library hours. That's an important distinction. So what staff is putting all of this together in November to take to the city council to place a ballot for the March 2024 spring primary election. And if it's approved, then construction would begin in about 2025. So what we're looking at the costs, the proposed parcel tax would be 17 cents per building square foot, which would raise about $2.7 million annually. The city would bond against that to be able to build out the facility. So one of the reasons that we are looking at it in this case, as opposed to if you all voted on Measure H, or if you did vote on Measure H a few years ago, that's a straight rate tax same for every single parcel. This is different. This would be based on your building square footage. So our thought, frankly, is that that's a little bit more equitable. It's not a flat rate for every single size parcel. So it would also allow us to provide that space that meets, again, the current health, safety, and seismic standards. And this will be, hopefully is at least as long as the last library, outlive all of us. So for fiscal accountability, and I will pause right here. As I know a lot of you in this room. I know, literally know a lot of you in this room. And we have talked a lot about over the past 3 years, how the city of El Cerrito has been dealing with a lot of financial challenges, which the pandemic made much worse. I'm here to tell you that we have definitely made so much significant progress on our finances to the point where we believe that we are going to be, hopefully very soon, I will be able to announce that we've even improved our bond ratings. We have improved by the state auditor from high risk to moderate risk. Again, these are baby steps, it seems like, but here's the thing. When I started as the city manager in 2019, our general fund reserve balance, which is kind of our savings account, was down to about $80,000. It's supposed to be anywhere between 4 and 5 million. And I will say that the city council what they had tried to do was they had tried to do a lot. They had tried to do a lot for everybody. And we realized then, and the state auditor also came to us and said, these reserves are too low. You need to build back these reserves. And then the pandemic hit. So with a lot of hard work from the city council and city staff, and with some luck in the real estate market and some federal funding, we were able to build back in just 2 years our general fund reserve balance. So last year, our general fund reserve balance, and I will tell you, we laid off 10% of our staff, we cut 10% of our budget, and we stopped a lot of services not just because of the pandemic, but also because we had to. They're back. We're back. Last year, our fund reserve was $7 million. The year after, it's $16 million. This next year, we're anticipating yet another surplus. We're still working on that. We're still closing the books, but it's going to be yet another at least $3 million. This is massive. So massive that the city council made a historic move a couple of months ago to set $9 million of that reserve aside for emergencies only. So we will never be in the position again that we will have an emergency and no savings account to sustain us. Furthermore, they've put $1 million into pension costs reserves so that any pension costs, if you may have heard, some of our pensions have, in all California cities have been increasing the costs. We've put aside a pension reserve to address that. And the state auditors noticed, the bond raters have noticed, and I'm just very proud to tell you that the city of El Cerrito, all of us together, and I would count the community in all of us, because a lot of you talked to me over the years and told me what you thought, and we've worked together to achieve financial health. We are healthy, we are stable, and we are ready to be able to do this. Having said that, the general fund money is meant to be there as a reserve. It can't be used to pay cash money to build a new building. So that is why we would put a ballot measure on, and this ballot measure would be, again, it would, when we say budget stable, that means that it would not impact the city's general fund budget. All the money created from this or gathered from this ballot measure can only go toward this project. That's it. It can only be spent on libraries. It can't be spent on salaries. It can't be spent on, City Hall. It can't be spent on the community center. It can only be spent on the library. It's restricted. That is why this ballot measure is a 2/3 ballot measure, because it is restricted specifically for this library. And what we would do is that we would make sure that we are requiring, again, it can only be spent on library purposes, but we would have independent citizen oversight. As you know, we have a financial advisory board, mandatory financial audits specifically to this fund, and yearly reports to the community to ensure that you all see how we're spending that money. So we are really taking, I can't emphasize enough how seriously we're taking our financial health. I'm really proud that we've done all this work and that we'll continue, and actually we expect it to get better. So here's the timeline that we're looking at now. We're in the middle. As you can see, what we've done is we've received direction from the city council back in February to take this on. We began surveying, as you may have heard. We did the national community survey, and we've done some surveying on various components and priorities that we just went over a minute ago. So right now we're continuing to collect that input, hear from you, hear from your priorities. We're going to conduct a polling survey to find out what all of this, how that has resonated within the community. That'll be coming up in early October. So we will take this to the city, all of this to the city council in November. We'll present it to them, and they will consider calling for an election by the first week of December. If that is true, then the measure would go on the ballot, on the primary ballot. If it's approved by the voters, then looking into spring for fall next year, then we would initiate the community design process. So if you're here to ask questions about what's going to go in the library, what's it going to look like, where's stuff going to go, we're not there yet, spoiler. But we will definitely have a community process to do the design part of the library. Right now, we're focusing on getting funding for it, and then we will initiate the design process using, and we'll do probably do another workshop, at least like this. We'll probably bring an architect on board, and we will work through that once the ballot measure is concluded. And then it looks like between 25 and 28, that building would begin construction, and hopefully we will, am I allowed to say hopefully? We will be found and cut the ribbon, hopefully by 2028. So that's my spiel. That's my kind of where we've been and where we're at now. So at this point, I would love to hear, so what we'll do first, what I'd like to hear is that if there are other priorities, and I can put the other list back up, that we heard from our surveys. And if there are different priorities or additional priorities in this room, we'd love to hear from you now because we're still gathering this information. By the way, I know that there are people on Zoom. So for Zoom, if you would like to answer this question, you can use the Q&A function on your Zoom screen and type that in, and we will take that into account. So at this point, and then after this portion, we will answer questions. So focusing on priorities, is there anything on here that we missed? Is there anything on here that's different? And I'm going to have Will, maybe between Will and Melanie, can you guys like do some mic running and maybe take some notes? Okay, great, thanks.
Oh, I just know, I don't think there are any teen programs.
Teen programs?
Yeah.
That's good.
I'm a senior with good access to the existing library right now, because as a retired person, I don't have to go at the really crowded times, and I can just, drive up, park out front, or park in the parking lot. And as a retired teacher, I'm kind of happy to see all those school kids have access to the library, because a lot of them do use it. What I would really like to see is on-site dedicated parking for the library, and especially the handicap parking places. As far as saying on-street managed parking, I think that's where you turn the parking places all within a half mile of the BART Plaza into paid parking, and then people either need to use an app to pay for that, or perhaps you would reserve some spaces on Liberty Street. To me, like if I were really handicapped and couldn't walk from my car, that would really be a disaster. So I really would like to see some on-site dedicated parking.
Sure.
Other? So just to kind of build on that, because I know it's a big topic. We will have lots of meetings on parking, but I do want to say that for commercial parking and access to the library, we do envision a 2-hour free zone just to continue to preserve good access around next to the library. That's right, on the public streets. That's right. It isn't in it, and I can add. Yeah, so we can talk about that later. But one thing I would like to add, because it's a point. So a parking space is about $80,000. A parking space in a structured parking environment, and so won't get into too much more about that. And we will have continued meetings on that. And we do hear definitely that very, very good accessible access to the library and the surrounding businesses is critically important.
Yeah, no. It's great.
Well said.
One thing I just noticed looking at this is it doesn't talk about expanded space for the books. Or it's all about the other activities, but not about expanding the actual inventory of books.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah,
I guess
we can make sure that that's clear. Yes. Yes. There's more space for more books. Absolutely. But yes, I mean, and also, being able to add to the budget for the books. Yeah. So did we have someone back there? Oh, sorry, the mic appears to be. Okay. All right. Well, maybe just speak right. So this gentleman, I think back. Great.
Hi, thanks. So if it's going to be at that BART building that's the developer is going to build, so the money that this vote is going to be for is just for building out the interior?
Yes, it would be building out the interior, all of the tenant improvements within the building, all the infrastructure, and all of the surrounding area.
And the shell. a portion of it would go to the developer to build the shell of the building. And then this might be moving into Q&A. So I don't know if you want to facilitate staying on priorities and moving to Q&A, but we can go more. So part of it would go to the developer for the shell, the ground floor. And then we would determine whether the tenant improvements would be a part of that same contract or if we would be doing that separately, but it would be going through its own design process, as Karen mentioned, if the measure passes.
So even more information. Thank you. So we're helping back the developer to build the shell of the building. And we're leasing the space, and then we're going to build out the interior space as well. Why do we have to do that?
We are not, the lease would be $1 a year. It would be as if we were buying a condo within a building. Imagine it that way.
Sounds a little better now. It's still, yeah. There's a lot of money involved, obviously.
Absolutely.
I don't like the BART area location for kids and seniors. I grew up here. Thanks for letting me know libraries are different now. I was at the current library in its opening week in 1948. And thanks for letting me know the libraries are different now, because I take my grandkids to libraries all over the United States, all over the world. Yeah, they're different. But what I've always enjoyed about our library, as you mentioned, is after school time, is all the kids from Fairmont School go to use it. And that's pretty vibrant. They use it well, and it's good to see them using it. Now, because I'm retired and I'm probably at El Cerrito Plaza 3 or 4 times a week for different reasons, doctor there, on and on and on. That is one busy block there between Richmond and a couple streets below it and Fairmont and Central. I mean, it's busy, 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 and that's after school time. There's a rush for traffic, starts at about 3:30 of cars filling the plaza, Central, Fairmont, both directions. It's a madhouse. And then there's just people all over generally, because the plaza is busy. It's even more busy now. And I softened on it a teeny bit when I thought the entrance was going to be on Central. Now the entrance is going to be like a facade on Fairmont, like almost an extension of the plaza. So it'll be even more activity around, a lot more BART activity, whatever that is, an extension of besides riders. And so when I think of people coming from Harding or a couple of the private schools, or maybe even walking over from Fairmont, and their, kindergarten through 6th, maybe 7th, 8th grade, makes me feel pretty uneasy about the environment they're coming into, with 5 crosswalks and, 2 driveways on Fairmont, 2 or 3 crosswalks, and another couple of driveways on Central. It's a little unnerving to me for the safety of kids.
So maybe what I'm hearing from you is a priority should be in this location, safe pedestrian walkways, and making sure that we're allowing for, it would also be not just about cars and all of those things, but safety for pedestrians. That's a good
pedestrians. They're different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Others, I think this, I'm gonna say someone we haven't heard from.
Thank you for all the work you've done. That's impressive. I've lived away for 25 years, even though I raised my kids in El Cerrito, and it's wonderful to be back. This is very exciting. Libraries, for me at least, are essential to everybody. Since we're doing a wish list, and maybe this is pie in the sky, I would like to see some community outreach. Okay. Libraries can do a lot when they go out into the community. Mm-hmm. There's so many things, even the space in the library, support groups for single mothers, or space, some kind of clearinghouse for what's out there. Mm-hmm. I know that where I lived, the local library had a lot of brochures, resources in the community. One was a fitness class, a balance in fitness class, which I could certainly use at a location, I forget, close by, done by Marin General Hospital.
Okay.
So they would come out, they had a program, they did handouts. That's the library.
Yeah.
So outreach into the community. I don't want to say too much more, but you can imagine
Sure.
what we could do going out. And I know that takes extra money. Also, volunteers. I didn't hear anything about the use of volunteers, which, you know, the world kind of, or our country kind of revolves around volunteers if we didn't have that. So that's just another idea.
And just to, for your point, so as I had, so the Contra Costa Library system runs the library. The city does not. We own the building, we provide the building, and this is true of pretty much, except for Richmond, they have their own library system, but every other city in Contra Costa County, the cities own the building and the county runs the building. So they hire the staff. They also do hire volunteers, and they hire, they take care of sort of the internal portion of the library. But like I said, the Contra Costa librarian is on the call and listening, so she's hearing you.
So volunteers, meaning no pay.
Yeah,
To read story time.
absolutely.
That.
Absolutely.
Right, exactly.
Great.
There was.
Thank
one
you.
Thing. Yeah,
Thank you. Okay, so anyone else who hadn't had any, this gentleman over here.
Thank you very much. Two things. First of all, is it possible to show us a map of exactly where the library will be located in relation to this plaza, and particularly where the entrance will be? I think that some of us are not quite clear about that. And so if there is something available, if you have something available tonight, that would be great. The other comment that we have, my wife and I, who are residents of El Cerrito and serious library fans, would like to suggest that, yes, outreach is very important. And both of us are oriented towards outreach because we're retired teachers and nurses. But we wonder if actually a lot of the community outreach should in fact happen in a community building, so that the library itself doesn't get overwhelmed with expectations of being everything for everybody.
Sure.
A library is supposed to be a library with a focus on books, learning, and discussion, etc.
Sure. That's a very good point. And also, and what we will have up on our website is we'll put up, actually, we could probably write down some links before we leave, or we can put them up on the screen on our website. We have the library portion where we talk a lot about the library and the needs assessment and what we've done to date. But we also have a lot of pages on our website that specifically relate to the site plan and the project. So we'll put those up so that you can see those, and then you can also take a look at those online. Yeah, and the design of it and all of the site plan stuff will be handled kind of on the project side. But that's a very good point. We'll make sure that that's available to everyone. Yes.
One, again, I don't see it on the list, but the Friends of the Library take up a lot of space, in the basement.
We forget the Friends.
And don't see.
Yes. And I can tell you that in the original need, all the way dating back to 2004, in the original needs assessment, there will definitely be space for the Friends of the Library to have a little bookstore. Absolutely. That is a promise. That is a promise. The Friends would never let us do this otherwise.
Yes, and just building on what Karen said previously, I will just say there'll be a whole design process. So later in the process, when this is funded, looking at the whole inside of the facility and then talking through all the different priorities, whether it's a maker space or space for Friends of the Library or dedicated reading areas or seniors or teens. So all of that will happen. It's just right now we're focused on the ballot measure.
But like I said, the Friends would never let me. No, I'm there for them. Yes. Oh. Okay. Go ahead. Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that sustainability.
Absolutely.
That should be a priority within the spaces adjacent. I mean, as an architect who does sustainable design, it's one of the things that drew me to El Cerrito, and the recycle center and the focus on that. I haven't heard anything about that in the outreach about the library. It's been very program driven or health, safety, welfare driven, but not sustainability.
As far as the building.
I appreciate partly just the tip that we also include that more in the outreach. So in building on this, we have looked at the space to make sure that it can accommodate all these. As Will said, we would look at the inside, but there's a lot of daylighting and it's given a kind of a grand facade on this open space so that there can also be indoor and outdoor learning. Similarly, of course, when a new building is built, it has to meet the highest green building standards. And so the architects themselves are looking for all the energy efficiency and water efficiency, but we should be highlighting that more. And as both Karen and Will said, the project itself is going to be getting, there's a lot of legislation about the project, but there will be some design meetings on the project coming up at the Design Review Board and others. So stay on our web pages. We don't have a date for that yet because we're looking for the second submittal, but just for everybody's information in terms of the cooling center, heating center, and all of those things in the building standards, the building has to meet the highest Cal Green standards. So
We can always go higher.
yeah, so we'll see which pieces. Yeah.
Absolutely right. And I know that, you know, I would expect that all of the elected officials who are listening would agree with you.
I think from what I've seen in libraries I've worked on, outdoor space that is actually dedicated and for kids and creates safe space, not just plaza space that is outside of the building, especially during COVID. The libraries that have controlled outdoor space, courtyard space, as extension of learning, and then the place where kids can eat, and not get yelled at by the library. That's super helpful.
Cool idea. Yeah.
Just as a quick reminder, we have several people online as well that if we don't speak directly into the mics, they can't hear the conversation. So if you could try, the mics are a little bit sensitive. The closer you put them to your mouth, it'll increase the volume a little bit. Thank you.
Okay.
I had, okay, most important to me is teen programming as well, like that the teenagers are often kind of left out of opportunities. However, I also feel like I need to ask a clarifying question. Do we really have a say on what happens in the library if it's run by the Contra Costa Library?
Well, actually, another person that I am sorry that I did not introduce is a member of the Contra Costa Library Commission, Michael Fisher, who is sitting in the front row and listening to all of this. So I would say yes. The Library Commission exists to, well, I don't know, Michael, why don't you talk a little bit about what you do?
Sure. The Library Commission actually consists of representatives from each of the cities, the 18 cities in Contra Costa that are part, and representatives of the 5 commissioners. So we easily have them outnumbered on the commission. We are an advisory group to the Board of Supervisors. They do listen to us. Programs bubble both ways. They come from the library down through us to the cities. They come from the cities through us up to the commission. So it's, and we who are on the commission, representatives of the cities, consider ourselves and having 2 hats. We're a county person, we're a city person, and we will make sure that all of those things continue to happen.
Yeah, and if you've ever met Heidi Goldstein, who's our current librarian, she's amazing. She's fantastic. She's so creative, and she is willing to. She just tries new things. She's just fantastic. And so the answer, I think, is absolutely yes. We do have a lot of influence and ability to make sure that what we're seeing is able to come to life.
I'd like to just put in a good word for the location. I actually think it's a good location. It's going to be at an intersection, so it can be approached from 4 different directions. In addition, by BART and by the 72 bus is nearby. The Greenway is nearby, and I've lived in El Cerrito long enough to know that the dream for El Cerrito to have a town center is a long one. That just it's been going on. I mean, I've heard that forever. And Fairmont Avenue actually has been kind of a dream of the community to be one of those places for El Cerrito. So, so I like the location. I also, as a part of the library interior, I'm wondering, I know there's going to be meeting rooms. Are those meeting rooms going to be available for like local civic groups so they can reserve? I mean, this is a problem that we have lots of local volunteer groups that are, you know, when they try to find a place to meet, they have to pay money. And it'd be nice if there was some kind of facility for local volunteer groups to actually get together.
That's a good priority, and that's exactly what we're envisioning.
In site planning, that did come up, and the architects of the building have, in consultation with the library, have looked to make sure that there's an exterior access so that even after hours, such a room could be available.
So we sort of, before we just leave this right now, we can just go straight into Q&A and comments. Any additional priorities that we haven't captured, and we'll still continue to take notes.
But to convince them that this is important and the public wants this. Well, how do you do that? Some kind of public campaign. A neighbor behind me, library, I just kept my mouth. Yeah, there's a thing, new library, and passed something years ago, and none of the money went for that. So I think public education, even having things in your home where you invite neighbors to come and to learn about what this means.
Sure.
And all the priorities are wonderful. But
so there's two sides to that issue. From the city side, as positive as you've heard me be tonight, I am not allowed to encourage or oppose how you vote on a ballot measure. As a city, we provide public information. That's our job. We are not allowed to say vote yes or vote no on anything. We are very strict about that. There's a lot of laws that prohibit us from doing that. So what you'll hear from us is, again, information. Having said that, and let me correct your neighbor, the city went out for a ballot measure in 2016 and it failed. So there was no ballot measure for a library at all. I've been here 22 years. Trust me, I would not be here talking to you. Secondly, however, a campaign does usually, when the city has placed ballot measures on before, there tends to be groups, some of you may be in this room, who form a campaign committee to oppose or to encourage voting on the bond measure, or I'm sorry, this isn't a bond measure, it's a ballot measure. And so I would expect that you will hear from a group who is encouraging you to either vote yes or vote no. They are not affiliated with the city. They're completely separate groups. But I have a feeling, again, I think some of you are in this room who are already contemplating such a group that will pop up, and you will probably hear from them, but it won't be from the city, just to be very clear. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Not from us. There will be a campaign, but from someone else. Yeah. Did you?
Yes, and I'm not going to speak long here for the city. There is such a group. Its webpage is the letter C for the number 4, and then PSL, which stands for Committee for a Plaza Station Library. If you go to c4psl.org, you can get involved, and we'd love to have you.
Yeah. And in the interest of being transparent, is there anyone here who is an organized opposition group that wants to give out their website? I just want to make sure that I'm not. No? Okay. Just want to be clear.
And any such groups who are interested in forming a campaign committee, they can contact me as the campaign contact to get some guidance on how to do that with this state. So you can certainly reach out to me in that capacity.
Yes, great. Okay. So questions, additional comments? That's gentlemen, or do we have any, actually, maybe I should go to any questions and answers online.
We do. We were waiting for kind of the Q&A because they
Okay.
weren't priority, but we do have some questions. So first, I just wanted to share a couple of things that our librarian has shared. I think you mentioned it, Karen, but she did say that the answer to why the library can't be open more hours currently is because the hours require more staff, and more staff would not fit in the current facility because it's too small. And she also wanted you to know that the library commissioners are also an advisory body to the county librarian herself. And then we do have some questions. The first one is, is the new library expected to be bigger than the current one in terms of square footage?
Yep, we're looking at a 20,000 square foot library. For comparison, the current one's about 6,000.
Okay. What is the outreach plan for the community to convince enough people to support the additional tax? It has proven a hybrid in the past. What is being done differently this time?
Well, again, I mean, I would answer that question as the city will provide public information, but as you have heard, there is at least one committee that is dedicated toward looking at this measure and promoting the measure. If there are any that are opposing the measure, they would also be listed on our website once they're formed as well. That's by state law, right? Holly, we are required to list the committees that form.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was reading and I didn't know what you said.
Our committees committees for or against are required to register with you in the state.
That is correct. And that information is required to be posted on the city's website.
Okay, so look for the city's website for such a thing. Yes, but we will continue to provide information. If you see mailers from us, if you see information from us, again, it is just that information. We are absolutely making sure that we are going to try to provide as much information as possible on our website. We have a ton of information, l-cerrito.org/library. Yeah. And yeah, once the council puts the measure on the ballot, then you will get more information about that.
And there'll be a whole page dedicated to it on the city clerk's website.
Yes, yes.
Yes. The next one, this location is prone to traffic and is accessible to high school kids, but those are the ones to be able to safely take public transportation. So for seniors and kids, this location is a very poor choice, but proximity ensures easy smash and grab type crimes. These would not occur at our current more walkable and drivable location. So sorry, that's feedback, I guess, not a question, but.
Yeah. And I will say that, I think that would be true in a lot of different places in the city, unfortunately, but the reality of the current building. So if you know where the current building is and the senior center that used to be behind it, which is now taken over fully by Fairmont School, the parcel that library sits on, pretty much the width of a parking space around that building is all the parcel is. That's what the city owns. The rest of it going into the school, behind and into the school, is all owned by the school district. That space is just not able to fit the building size that this community needs assessment identified. So just, if we want a bigger building, it needs to be elsewhere. It cannot be in that space.
And then our last one at this time, I have concerns about the increase in crime and lack of police presence due to short staffing in the BART system, which could easily overflow into the library. Would you consider communication with BART to make sure there is increased safety, especially after dark?
And I'm glad that there is a BART board director who just heard that comment, and she will take that into consideration. Would you like to address that?
Just also, hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm your BART board member, but I also live down the street and was just at the library today. So super library user, very excited about this. We're doing a lot at BART to increase safety. We've heard a lot from riders and residents that that's something they want to see. So our police department has really shifted how they do their deployment. A lot of them used to be out in cars responding to the things in the system. Now on each shift, half of them are riding the trains or in the station, so they're a lot more visible. We've also hired community ambassadors and crisis intervention specialists to address situations that aren't necessarily crimes, but people having a mental health crisis, people who are unhoused, and they've diverted thousands of calls that before were going to armed police officers. So now the police are really able to focus on actual crimes. So it's a top priority at BART. We're staffing up right now, so we're not at full staffing yet at the police department, but we've had a lot of success through our last couple of recruitments. So you're just going to see more and more of a presence in the coming months and years.
Thank you. We definitely appreciate you being here, board members.
I have two questions.
Okay.
Hear this? One has to do with the cost. So I had heard at one time the library was going to cost 20 million. Are we now saying 30? You said there's a $10 million savings off of what number?
So when we went to the ballot in 2016, the number we were seeking was $30 million. And that would have built us a 20,000 square foot standalone building. In 2023 costs, that's closer to $40 million. So what this would save us, but the cost we're actually looking at, we were thinking of 10 million from the original price. So we're looking at 20 to $22 million cost, which actually is, it's more than 10 million from today's costs. So it's going to be about 22 million.
Okay, thank you. And my other question or just clarification is on parking. The only parking is going to be street parking. Is that right?
Yeah, I can share. And again, it'll be going to the design review board. So BART is replacing some of the transit parking. So there will be a parking structure, a floor, and then the rest will be managed by the city for all needs. So that includes obviously people needing to get to BART, but also to the commercial businesses in the library. And our current thinking, we have some time to be able to plan it all out and how it works. But our current thinking is that there would be, like a lot of commercial districts, 2-hour free parking to get to businesses and the library. And then the rest of the streets would also have some sort of form of paid parking for longer 4-hour, 6-hour visits.
And just to be clear, the city oversees the street parking. We would not be able to oversee any of the bar parking. So.
Not in the garage. So it would be the on-street managed parking. That's right.
Probably would be closer to the building.
That's true too. So the other nice thing about the location, I know people have talked about the location. The current location is Liberty. Liberty. So there are two frontages. And we also have placed it there, provides another opportunity also for convenient book drop-off, for example, which was an important part, and looking at staffing needs of the county librarian, et cetera. But there would be both two frontages, so it'd be Fairmont and Liberty, but the rest of the area, as Karen just mentioned, would be city managed, but we would be looking to make sure that there's adequate for quick drop-offs, quick pickups, and of course disabled parking, and it would be a dynamic system depending on what the needs in the area are as they change. But library and local businesses would be, as we know, transit users use it for longer, so we would be trying not to have them have the closest spaces. We would keep those for the quicker, higher turnover uses like the library and other businesses.
So I'm curious, what's going to happen to the current structure?
At this time, we don't have any plans for that yet. That is to be determined. No answer. That'll be determined if this ballot measure passes and we move to a new structure, then we will, I'm sure there will be a community process for that as well, or something that we would be able to consider. I mean, we just no answer at this time, nothing at this time. We don't know.
So you did mention, I'm sure it's on some minds of parking at the plaza, and that, that part of the plaza these days is, equally busy to the Trader Joe's side now because of all the new businesses and a lot of activity. What do you think the plaza management thinks of library parking at the plaza?
We have talked to them. So I think I'm going to quote Councilmember Abelson for a moment, just to say that having a parking problem is kind of a goal for downtown, to have an active downtown, you have parking problems. So you have to increase your management. So I think most places we go that are active, and I appreciate that that the plaza is busy. And we have talked to the Regency ownership, and they have other locations and similar locations. And sometimes they have to more manage their parking to make sure that it's not accommodating too much spillover. And they're prepared, obviously, in their negotiations with tenants. They like to make sure that they let their tenants know that they will be providing parking for businesses. So they are aware, and we're in touch with them.
And just to add to that, one unique advantage of this location is the symbiotic nature of the being next to the shopping center. So you could go to the grocery store and drop off a book, or your kid could go to the library and you could go to the grocery store, and all the various things you could do in one trip. So there's all those ways in which it's advantageous.
Hello. I'm a part of the group that will be advocating for the library. And I have a concern that clearly a lot of education has to happen between now and March 5th. Ballots are mailed to all of us 29 days prior to March 5th, which is February 13th.
That's it.
So people could start voting as early as mid-February.
Yep.
My concern is that if the city council doesn't take action sooner rather than later, if you wait till the beginning of December, as was suggested in the slides, people are in the holiday season, and groups that want to advocate and educate and reach out to the community will have approximately 6 weeks to get an effective message out. So could you consider putting the pedal to the metal?
We are going to, so spoiler alert, there are, as you may know, during the summer, the city council has one meeting a month as a summer sort of, not really a hiatus, but they have one meeting each month during the summer. We will have two, now that we're going into October, oh my gosh, already. We're going into October, we have 2 meetings in October, 2 meetings in November, and 2 meetings in December. We are looking at the first meeting of November to have a presentation to the city council and bring this up so that at the next meeting in November, they can do the consideration for placing this on the ballot. It needs to be placed on the ballot by December 5th. And so in November, both meetings in November, we will be talking about the library. So we're going to be talking about that already. And again, and I hear you. I mean, it's always difficult when it comes to public engagement. I've been in local government for about 30 years, and it's almost like, unless I go and knock on everybody's door and tell them what's going on, I feel like we've sent out mailers. We've sent out how many mailers? 4 mailers already to all these households in El Cerrito. We've put stuff on social media. We put stuff on our website. We've got groups that are popping up. We have talked at the 4th of July. We talked at National Night Out. So from our perspective, we're trying everything possible and using every avenue that we can, every ability to engage the public at every opportunity this entire year. But but again, the conundrum of that is it's hard because we still don't feel like we reach enough people. So I totally hear you. And it's not just this measure, it's about pretty much anything. So all I can promise you is that we're going to continue to try to do this. We're going to continue to put out mailers. We're going to continue to put out as much information as we can. And the city council will take this up in November. Holly?
I have a few more online comments, and then I also just wanted to recognize that Mayor Pro Tem Rudnick has also joined us quite some time ago. It just hasn't had an opportunity to share. So 2 questions. Will commercial properties be taxed as well? And if the Contra Costa Library is in charge of staffing, why are El Cerrito funds needed for the extra hours that are anticipated?
That's a good question. The answer is yes, this would be a parcel tax on all parcels. The second answer is, so maybe I better direct that question to the Contra Costa Board of Supervisors. The Contra Costa Board of Supervisors allocates a certain amount of money. Michael, you can help me with this one if I misspeak or if I don't say enough. Contra Costa Library is allocated a certain amount of hours, a baseline set of hours per branch. So like I said, every other city in the county except for Richmond is a member of the Contra Costa Library, but they also have some unincorporated library branches as well. They all get essentially the same baseline level of funding, every single one. So if a city wants to have extra hours, any city, they have to pay the extra. That is the current system. I encourage you to talk to your board of supervisors and tell them to fund the library with more money so that they can increase their baseline hours. But currently that is, I think they're thinking equitably across the board for their provision baseline. However, it does present a challenge for us. When we were having our budget challenges, there was a debate at this council dais if we should be funding extra hours, and the community overwhelmingly asked them to do that, and they did do that. But if there was a city that was in a budget crisis, that is definitely a problem. We recognize that. So, but because this is the way that the current agreements, the lease agreements that we have with the library, how it rolls, we are responsible for, also we're responsible for some information technology costs as well. This is, I can only hope that the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors would be able to give some more funding to the Contra Costa Library so that they can increase their baseline hours and relieve the cities. But at this time, if we want additional hours above the 40, then they're up to the cities. Did I characterize that well, sir?
Just about precisely. The baseline hours turn out to be 40 hours in each city. And each city can contract with the county for additional hours. The fact that it's only 40 hours, you should know that 2 years ago it was 36 hours. And that has now been increased. We struggle with this issue all the time. It's an issue of how much money do we get? And Karen's right, take it to the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you. Anything else online, Holly, before we go back to the in-room?
We're all caught up.
Okay, who's next?
You said something about the library money could not be used for salaries. But if you're paying extra library hours, would that not be paying salaries of?
That is a good point. I meant city staff salaries. So it would not go to any current city staff. It would go to the county, which then they could use for staff. That's true.
Okay.
So no city administrative salaries. I'll be more clear. Thank you.
Then I'm wondering how specific is this measure going to be? Because I mean, the city has sent out 3 or 4 mailers that I've received, but for instance, it didn't name the location of the library and it didn't name the cost of the library. It just talked about how our library is old and we all really need a new one, which who could argue with that? It's important what's in the measure. For instance, BART is having a lot of financial difficulties and, has survived on federal funding and then wanting the state and the region to give more money. So what happens if the project doesn't go forward as planned or in a timely manner? Should El Cerrito be on the hook for, that money? How long would that money be sitting there? What would happen to it? What are the strings attached so that El Cerrito money goes for city taxpayers? So there are a lot of questions, and I think they should really be answered in the measure because the whole measure didn't pass because I think that a lot of questions were not answered.
Sure. And that is absolutely what we plan to do once the city council makes that decision as to what that would look like. We're still working on that portion. But to answer your question about the library, this money can only be spent on the El Cerrito library. I have no doubt that this project is going to go forward. I have no doubt that BART is they're going to be great and they're going to keep going and there's going to be no issues and they're not going to fall off said fiscal cliff. Having said that, this money can only go toward an El Cerrito library. So we would look elsewhere. I mean, like I said, don't even want to try to manifest that question because I am being very super positive about BART and what they're doing, but this money could only be spent on an El Cerrito library. And
we're going to do everything we can to avoid a fiscal cliff. And I think we have a good plan about how to save money and bring more revenue in. But even if BART had to cut service, this project would still move forward because BART isn't putting money into the project. Ultimately, we get money out of it mostly from getting more riders, the full transit-oriented development project, probably a little bit less so the library, but they'll probably bring some riders. So it's good financially for BART. So BART wouldn't pull out of it, even if we were having to cut costs, cut services. So it's not really a project that's in danger, even if some other things at BART might be.
Okay. When this partial tax passes, and I think it will, the money can or cannot be used to supplement the county hours.
it can. It
Okay.
can. That is the difference between a bond measure, which was what we tried for in 2016, and that can only go toward a building and what's in the building. A parcel tax is, well, we can be whatever the ballot measure says it is. You all, this city passed Measure H, which is a parcel tax for park and recreation in the pool in 2019. And so that's whatever the ballot measure said that that's the money to be spent on, that's what it would be spent on. That's the difference between a parcel tax and a bond. This would be a parcel tax.
One
Which
more.
includes maintenance and library hours. It can be spent on that.
And does this partial tax sunset at any point in time, or does it go on forever?
At this point, it would be until repealed by voters.
Okay.
Just one moment. We're trying to have people listen online, so we do want to have a microphone. Can you pass that? Or, you haven't, we'll do Buddy and then we'll pass that to you. Go ahead, Buddy.
Yeah. I get that you want to go from an inadequate building to a state-of-the-art building. Good plan. I'm thinking that the senior community wants to go from no home, essentially we're kind of a homeless community right now, to a senior center. To what degree is your thinking in all of this process for a library, has the concept of a senior center been included in your thinking, in your dialogue?
So this would not include a separate senior center. That is not part of what we're contemplating for this building. And just as a point of background, the city had a senior center behind the library for 50 plus years. The school district ended our lease. And so we were forced to leave. They gave us about a year's notice. We were forced to leave that spot. Then we put portables over on the other side of the police department to house a Midtown Activity Center. We use that name very specifically because it is meant to broaden, not just for seniors, but all adults. And I have a 77-year-old mom who refuses to be called a senior. So there's a lot of differences in the senior community. So we called it the Midtown Activity Center, and then the pandemic shut it down, completely shut it down. We were not able to, and we also, as you know, as I had indicated before, we also cut a lot of staff during that time. We are ramping back up our staff and we are ramping back up our senior services. So right now we have a full senior services program that is being housed at the community center. I recognize that that's not a separate senior center. However, in our quest to make sure that we are staffing appropriately, as well as the state auditor's recommendation was to get rid of those buildings because it was costing us a lot of money in the pandemic that weren't being used, which we have done. And as you know, if you don't know, Kensington Police Department is actually leasing them because they don't have a building. So we're getting extra police patrols, kind of nice. But we are having a lot of senior programs at the community center. We are looking to try to work on that space to make maybe some more senior centric types of spaces within the community center or any of the other clubhouses that we have. But while we don't have a specific place, a separate place, we do have a specific place where we are providing senior services. In this building, however, we do contemplate that senior services could also be housed. We could also have some programs or for seniors, we could have rooms available as we talked about and stuff, definitely access for seniors. So seniors are absolutely being considered within this building, just not a separate building at this time. Going forward, there are a lot of needs and a lot of building needs in this city. That is something we can consider later. Absolutely. We hear you. And
I think the transit is absolutely wonderful, central location. And I encourage you guys to do a great campaign this time. I know the community actives last time sank, as I recall, it was about to pass.
I'm sorry, say that again.
As I recall, in 2016, it looked like the measure was going to pass. There's a community actives out there that sank it. So I'd encourage you guys to counter that, numbers and whatnot, because it was disappointing. I talked to Jana as well. Yeah. I'm going to assume it'll be named after her. No, she was a big library supporter.
Yeah. The 2016 election was a weird one. maybe I'll just leave it there. I was gonna say, and this person next too. Yeah.
Hi, this is a suggestion for a priority, but it also segues into a question. My suggestion is about the phrase tutoring and literacy.
Okay.
And I'd like to suggest that that be expanded to include what we could call counseling and support for student career paths. So a public library being a key step to higher education learning and education kind of requires a different twist to literacy, but it can be included. My question
that's a great
follows that is that when we think about the counseling and the tutoring and so forth for a student career path towards higher ed, I think we need to recognize the different learning methods that are being used. So the equipment for 3D whiteboards, live stream, Zooming, group study, and so forth. It's pretty high-end equipment. So my question is, will equipment be included in library operations and funding and so forth and in this plan?
Yes, and the answer is yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. In like state-of-the-art equipment. Yeah, absolutely.
Hi.
I will start by saying I am also a huge library fan. I'm there at least once a week. I'm also going to say I've known Michael Fisher for years, and he won't be surprised to hear me say I voted against the last one. And the reason I voted against the last one was because, as someone else mentioned here, it just said, please give us a bunch of money. We're going to build a library somewhere. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. I just heard you say this one's going to say in perpetuity. If I see something that says I need $20 million to build out a library, but I'm going to have a parcel tax for the rest of your life and your children's life and your grandchildren's life, I'm going to say, I don't get that. So I think that's going to be a question that needs to be answered in all of the publicity, the fun.
Sure.
Goes on.
Yeah. And at this time, like I said, it would be until repealed by voters. So the voters would have the ability to put that on the ballot and repeal it if they wanted to. And then through the initiative process or however it works. And at the last time, as maybe I don't have to rehash history too much, but we absolutely had anticipated with working with the school district to be able to put the library at the spot next to the community center. And the school district ended up not going along with that plan after we had put it on the ballot. So that was part of it, but I do understand. And so that's also part of this. It's not just that there is a location, but that this location and the way that this works is that it would save the city millions of dollars to be able to do this as opposed to a standalone location. But I hear that. It's good. Good feedback. Any other questions? Anything online, Holly?
It helps if I turn my own mic on. If the tax is essentially permanent after it pays for the building of a library, will that much tax money be needed to maintain the library?
So we anticipate that this would gather about $2.7 million per year that we would then bond against. If you recall, when was the streets measure? 2006, 2008. This is a very similar situation where the money that's gathered every single year, we used part of that to bond against, and we rebuilt all the streets within 5 years, if you remember that. We're still working on that. We're still doing maintenance yearly, and that's exactly what we were doing. So we have sort of split the money. We're paying off our bonds with the sales tax money. And then there's another portion of that money that goes into annual maintenance. So once the bonds may be paid off, then yes, that money would go toward library hours, maintenance, and anything to do. It can only be spent on the library. So that's what, similar to the streets measure that was passed in this city. That's it. Okay. And I think,
yeah, I mean, this kind of follows on both of those earlier questions about the ongoing nature. So it does seem strange if you're getting a bond that has a fixed time period where you're amortizing the cost of the upfront costs. And so I think it probably would be more, transparent to show the community that, the initial cost is being paid off over a certain period of time, and then it sunsets, and then there's a different amount of money that is the ongoing maintenance. It's a little questionable that it would be the same amount of money before and after the upfront costs are paid off. So I think it just might help people understand that distinction. I mean, I support both the building upfront and the ongoing maintenance, but how that breaks down as an amount over time might need to be more clearly explained. So.
That's really good feedback. And like I said, we could, similar to how the streets bond has worked, that's exactly, but thank you. That's really good feedback. And we can, as we're putting together more information and our questions and answers and frequently asked questions for our website, we can consider those types of putting something like that in that on that webpage. Any other questions, thoughts? We're running into 7:30, so I've taken an hour and a half. You've given me an hour and a half of your time. If there are no additional questions, I just want to say thank you all so much for spending part of your night with me. I really appreciate it. You've all asked wonderful questions, and we've recorded this as well. So we're going to be putting this on our website and additional information, and we've heard everything you've said. So we're going to kind of buck up our own public information and provide that to everyone. And if you have any questions at all, el-cerrito.org/library. Will is going to be one of our point persons, although he's going on parental leave very, very soon. But also me and Alex and Melanie, we're all here to answer questions, and you can email us or let us know. We'll be at council meetings, and I just really appreciate all of you. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your night.